have with me today Mayor Kenney, members of City Council, state senators who are trying very hard to fight this, and we need your help doing that, and I'd like to thank the mayor for being here. Mayor Kenney.
Thank you. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be back in City Council. I see it's as hectic as usual under the great leadership of our council president, but I know there's lots of folks going on and lots of things being discussed, but this is really, really important, and we're here to speak out today against, I think it's House Bill or Senate Bill? It's both. Both, House 192. This bill is just simply hypocritical. I mean, conservative legislators consistently advocate for local control, and the only reason that they abandon that value when it comes to guns is because of their relationship with the NRA. I mean, it's just purely a kind of a quid pro quo situation, and they'll jump when the NRA, he'll say how high when the NRA says jump. Anyone seeking additional proof that this law is purely motivated by that relationship need only to consider that individuals already have standing to challenge Philadelphia's gun ordinances if they believe them to be unconstitutional. This law won't make us safer. It will only just make the NRA and the state legislatures more chummy and play to the gun advocates who don't understand that, and I respect the fact that guns and gun culture in Pennsylvania is a cultural issue. It's a hunting issue, it's a sportsman's issue, sportsperson's issue, and I respect that. But as you see what's going on in our streets and in the streets of major cities around the country, that is not a culture that we're proud of and that we want to change, and we never get the opportunity to change it because they always want to stand in the way in order to ingratiate themselves with the NRA. Especially in national election years. So I just think we have to keep fighting for what we know is right and for Philadelphia and its children. I want to thank our legislators and from Philadelphia and from the surrounding area that are friends of ours and friends of our children and friends of our neighborhoods that understand the carnage that's going on in the streets. Our forefathers did not intend for everyone to have a right to an AK-47. And I'm all in favor of all muzzle-loading guns and blunderbuss that people want to have. But when you can pull a trigger and shoot 15, 20 rounds at a time, something's wrong. And our police are outgunned, our kids are outgunned, and something's got to come to an end. But these bills are really unnecessary and hypocritical, as I said, because people have standing anyway to sue anytime they like about constitutionality or unconstitutionality of anything. So I want to thank everyone who assembled here, thank our leadership in the Senate and House for their continued efforts in a really difficult fight. Sometimes it gets frustrating, but I know they will never give up. So thank you. I came up here to thank you for that. So thanks again. Who's here? Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Kenney. I'd like to call on Council President Clark, who has been leading this fight to protect Philadelphia for a long time. He's been leading Philadelphia Council, who keeps trying to find new ways to keep our city safe, despite Harrisburg's best efforts to stop them. Council President.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As the late President Ronald Reagan said years ago, not necessarily about this issue, but I remember him saying, "Here we go again." I want to thank the legislators in an extremely unfriendly environment, particularly as it relates to this particular issue, for continuing to be strong and through their due diligence to fight back these efforts to essentially take the control from the local elected officials. It is clear, and I heard a reference to what was going on in Chicago as it relates to gun violence, but the simple matter is that this has been nationalized in this particular year, which is important. And I want to thank for the members of the House and the Senate to continue to talk about the need to eliminate weapons across this country. I mean, there's a notion about, and the mayor talked earlier about the culture of the state of Pennsylvania. We absolutely love the fact that people want to hunt, but you do not need an AR-15 to hunt deer. I'm telling you, I don't care what anybody says, particularly with given the ease with which they can modify the weapon to rip off 50 shots at a time. This is madness. The city of Philadelphia deserves the opportunity to enact its own legislation, as the NRA has a right to have their say. But at the end of the day, our ability to protect our citizens lies clearly within the local municipality's ability to enact good sense legislation. So with that, I want to thank my colleagues in particular who have fought, and, we went to the Supreme Court and fought the good fight, but, we're preempted. But I want to thank the members. By the way, the mayor was the councilman back then. We were having a good little rumble. And I want to thank the members of the General Assembly so much because I understand the environment. It's easy for us to stand down here in this friendly environment and talk about guns, but you guys were actually up there, and I know the NRA people, moving down the hallways of the Harris. They don't come to City Hall, but they do come up there. So I want to thank you guys so much for your support. Judge Lerner, thank you. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, President Clark. I do want to acknowledge Judge Lerner is also here from the Kenney administration. They've been great partners in this work. We have several members of City Council here, some who you'll hear from, but just let me acknowledge everybody. In addition to Council President Clark, we have Council members Jones, Johnson, Parker, Greenlee, Jim, Dom, Blackwell, Reynolds Brown, and Green, and we'll have State Senators Dalen Leach, Vincent Hughes, Lawrence Farnese. I want you to know that I know that this is a wonky issue when we talk about standing and preemption and what does this mean, but I also want you to know that we have had thousands of calls and emails in this last week from people all across the Commonwealth to their state representatives and senators asking them to vote no on House Bill 2258 and Senate Bill 1330, and because of that work, in the House, there were 242 amendments on the bill, and it did not move. And the Senate only had a few amendments, but it also did not move. So the calls and things are getting through. We bought a week of time. Harrisburg, they're only going back for a few days in October. We may be able to do it, but we do need your help to keep fighting. We didn't know if today's press conference would be that the bill had passed or not, but I'm happy to report that it is not moving yet. We are buying time. And I'd like to invite Senator Leach to talk a little bit about what's going on up there.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am the infamous Leach of Leach versus Turzai that got Act 192 struck down in its previous incarnation. I'm very proud to have been participated in that along with some of the folks up here today. I'm going to use just my brief time to talk about how extreme this bill is. This bill expands standing. Usually standing means that you suffered a specific harm yourself and therefore you're suing. This expands standing to out-of-state organizations like the NRA that have nothing to do with Pennsylvania to come in and sue our own citizens, because that's who pays the judgments that we have to pay to the NRA. And that's very important to remember. Legislators are voting who support this to have their own citizens have to pay money to the NRA. That is breathtaking, and it shows you how much of a wholly owned subsidiary the Pennsylvania Legislature has become to the NRA. Not only is the standing element of it breathtaking, so is what you can be sued for. As I think Mayor Kenney alluded to, there's already laws on the books that allow you to sue for unconstitutional laws. These laws, the plaintiffs in these cases and under this proposal don't have to prove the law was unconstitutional. All they have to prove is it had the word gun in it. And it's not just the law. You can be sued as a municipality if you pass a resolution. A resolution has no force of law. All it is a wish that the law in the future someday may change. Talk about a First Amendment issue. You're not even allowed to say out loud that we would like the law to change in the future. Even if there's a practice that you have, let's say you have a problem with someone bringing a gun to a school board meeting and threatening people, and you said, you know what, we're not going to allow guns into our school board meeting. Not an ordinance at all, just a practice based on an experience. You can be sued for that. And you can't justify it. There's nothing under the law that allows you to say, well, this is why we did it. Solely because you did anything that involves a gun, you owe the NRA money, you owe them counsel fees, you owe them cost of suit, all of which your own constituents would have to pay. There is no other law in America like this. This is something beyond the pale. And I can say that I will do everything I can legislatively, and if that fails, through the courts, to make sure that this dreadful law, which prevents municipalities from doing the basic things they can do to protect their citizens, never goes into effect, because I think the safety of all of us depends on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Leach. I also want to point out that, often at ceasefire PA events, we will have police officers and faith leaders and survivors of gun violence. But here, the targets of this law are the people you see before you, the city council people who put themselves on the line, who are elected to represent us to keep us safe. In Lower Merion Township last year, the NRA sued them in their personal capacities. These people are doing their job, and they are being attacked. And the only people this law would benefit are the NRA and the gun lobby lawyers. Those are the people who would make money. This doesn't help anybody. So I have several members of City Council who are here and want to speak, and I'd like to first ask Councilmember Jones. Is he here? Is he not here?
I could take his time.
Okay, he's not here. I'm sorry. Is Councilmember Johnson here? Yes.
Thank you, Shira. I just want to first and foremost thank the leadership of our representatives in the House and the Senate for fighting on this most critically important issue. And being a former member of the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania and working along with my colleague Sherelle Parker, I know it's a very, very tough issue and a very, very tough environment. And so for me, this particular advocacy from a policy standpoint is critically important to make sure that as we advocate for our own rights as a city, to make sure that as many young people as possible don't have access to illegal guns, this bill must be defeated. And so hopefully the people who are voting on this bill, who are supporting the bill, can think about all those children here in the city of Philadelphia who are losing their lives to youth gun violence. Every month, I'm going to some type of funeral and consoling some type of mother or children because they lost their children as it relates to some type of youth gun violence. And so I want to thank Shira for her advocacy on this bill. You have my 110% support. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councilwoman Parker, who we started this fight together when she was in the House of Representatives, and it was her office that was running all the amendments. Luckily, we still have some friends up there. And thank you for playing this with us today and getting all your colleagues, because I know you know how important this fight is.
Just let me say thank you, Shira, and thank you to Ceasefire. Senator Hughes, when I just listened to what Senator Leach mentioned when he talked about hitting municipalities where they could least afford it in their pocketbooks, you immediately came to mind, and you came to mind because you know one of the most powerful ways in politics and or governance that you can let a strong signal to be heard or to be seen is to hit an entity in their pocketbook. An effort to push what we thought we had stopped. We thought we were successful when the courts ruled last year, but to say to municipalities in Philadelphia, don't think you are alone. I know in many instances when we're advocating in Philadelphia, Philadelphia seems like the Lone Ranger howling in the wind, but there is Pittsburgh, there is Lancaster, there is Allentown, and there were over 30 municipalities when we worked on this issue in 2015 who stood alongside Philadelphia to say that in absence of a state law that will help to protect our citizens of needless acts of violence committed with guns, many of them illegal, we have to find a way to come up with a response, and we have. And so I'm happy that Ceasefire, along with the legislature, our colleagues, judges, great to see you here, are once again standing on the line, forming alliances with many of those municipalities, saying we will do what we have to do to protect the best interests of our regional locale. So thank you so very much for your work.
Thank you. I want to ask Senator Hughes to speak, and then we have a few more speakers. I just want to also note that the Philadelphia delegation to the House has a retreat today. That is why they're not here. They weren't left out. They are fighting hard alongside us. But we are well represented by our senators.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Shira, Ceasefire, all of the council members, even our former legislators, all right, who used to troll the halls of Harrisburg. Councilwoman Parker is correct. The way you get at these communities is you hit them in your pocketbook. And clearly we want to stand with those communities all across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but let's be real clear of why we're here. And I'm just going to call off a few names. David Becton, Eric Hernandez, Rodney Anderson, 16-year-old Rodney Anderson, Marquise Johnson, Cain Pittman, Christoph Campbell, Ruben Arroyo, Al-Salarag Ford, Joel Montanez, and Khalid Harris. They've all lost their lives since May of this year as a result of gun violence and gun action. David Becton, Eric Hernandez, 16-year-old Rodney Anderson, Marquise Johnson, Kaim Pittman, Christoph Campbell, Ruben Arroyo, Alsalarag Ford, Joel Montanez, and Khalid Harris. All from all over the city, all folks who just wanted to live their lives, all individuals who just wanted to pursue, if you will, the American dream, taken from us needlessly because of guns. All this city wants to do, and all communities want to do across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is control the affairs of their own community. You control the affairs of your own community. That's what City Council comes down here at least once a week, most months out of the year. That's what they work hard for with the mayor, working with the legislators from this region to control the destiny and the circumstances within their own community. What's happening in Harrisburg is a disgrace from a legal perspective, but it's a disgrace from the perspective of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lives, these 10 names, these 10 human beings that I just mentioned, who represent hundreds more who are taken from us because we don't have the ability to control the gun activity that exists in our community. We will fight this. We need people to continue calling. Shira made a very good point. We slowed this thing down because people called and they raised noise and they raised hell, all right? They sent letters, they sent emails, they got on social media, they raised all kinds of you-know-what to slow the process down. And in the limited amount of time that exists in the legislative session, both in the House and the Senate, hopefully that continued pressure will keep it slowed down, will keep this from coming in front of us, and we won't have to deal with this. But if you can't do it for the financial security and the sanctity of the city of Philadelphia or any community, do it for these 10 names who 6 months ago, Senator Leach, when we were here in front of this body, these individuals were alive. They were living, alive, breathing. Since then, they've been taken from us. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to ask Senator Farnese, who I know has to leave, and then we'll close out with our remaining council members.
Thank you very much. I just want to pick up on the comments that the councilwoman made about the cost. And we said this in 2014 when we argued and debated this bill on the floor of the Senate, which right before we actually broke and the legislature, Republican-controlled legislature, knew that the only way they would get the bill signed is if they got it to Governor Corbett before he was tossed out of office. And the issue is this. This bill, in its form back in 2014 and its form right now, if passed, could levy the largest single tax increase in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And the reason for that is that the costs of suit, of attorney's fees, of punitive damages, of whatever other fees that the court not only is required to make under the law, but chooses to make, will be borne by the municipality. And that is very first and the single largest tax increase possible. Now, when we argued this case before, I sort of stayed away from the single subject rule, and I really focused my attention on the privileges and immunities clause. The issue of standing and access to the courts is something that we enjoy as citizens, not only in Pennsylvania, but as citizens of the United States of America. If you believe that the Supreme Court case of a few years ago, the Citizens United case, was a significant decision and overreaching, if this law becomes on the books and is upheld by the courts, it will make Citizens United look like a comic book, because it will grant unprecedented access to the courts, not only in Pennsylvania jurisprudence, but American jurisprudence. The first time that access, not only to someone in an organization within Pennsylvania, but an out-of-state organization, not a person, an organization could come in access our courts and utilize the subpoena powers and the privileges and immunities that are given to us as citizens within the Commonwealth, and that come with the court. So this decision, this legislation is significant because it's going to go up on appeal to the Supreme Court if it's passed. And it would be a constitutional issue this time. We don't have the single subject rule anymore to flip this. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court failed to address the constitutional issues and the privileges and immunity issues that we talked about the last time. But I am hopeful that we can slow this bill down, and I'm certainly hopeful that if, God forbid, it does get through, that Governor Wolf a pen will never get near the paper and sign it. So I appreciate you having me here today. Thank you for ceasefire. Thank you for City Council President for having us here today, and thank you to all my City Council members. We know that each and every day you guys understand this better than anybody. You're on the front lines with our men and women in uniform fighting out there to get those guns off the streets. So thank you for your continued support, and thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Senator. I think that the Senator's point that this is a completely unique and unprecedented law cannot be understated, and should be repeated over and over. And I tell you that if the NRA should succeed, they are not the only group who will come back to the legislature asking for a special right to sue. There will be a line out the door because everybody will want it. The ACLU doesn't have that special right to sue. You know, I don't have it. That's what's going to happen. Councilman Jones is here, so here you go.
Colleagues. So I'm joined also by Councilman Green and Councilwoman Blackwell, and this is significant. And Councilman Don, this is significant. I have 2 at-large, 2 district council people. You learn quickly as an elected official and a council person in the city of Philadelphia how to watch the news. We watch the news differently than others. We watch the news looking for the number of fatalities that we see. And the first thing, and having worked with my colleagues long enough to know, is we pray for the soul that we lost. And then we want to know the geography, what district it happened in, because we also know that's another funeral, that's another teddy bear memorial that we have to go to, that's another unconsolable mother. If you've ever heard the cry of a mother who finds out prematurely they've lost their child, it will change your perspective on gun control. I respect our elected officials. I know it's hard work. But State Representative Keller comes from Perry County. And I know the deer and the antelope play there. But they've had 1 murder in the last year. 1 murder in the last year. So to give you context, I taped the movie Unforgiven. And it stars Clint Eastwood. And he's an old gunslinger, and he's going on his last rampage. And this is a real shoot-'em-up cowboy movie. In that whole movie, 7 people died. 7 people dead in Philadelphia is a bad weekend. These guns are out of control in our communities. They do not come from Mars. And when we take steps as a municipality to try to curb that violence, and we hear from somebody who's had 1 murder in an entire year, it breaks our heart for them not to know how to GPS Market Street to come down there and find out what's really going on. So we support ceasefire. We passed a resolution out of this body unanimously condemning this bill that it just doesn't take into account what we deal with every single day. We had 11 murders in the course of a week one time. That's 4 more than in the Clint Eastwood movie Unforgiven. So we thank our state senators and state reps that are going to fight this thing. And I would love to come and testify and bring my colleagues up to let them know what we go through every day. How many funerals we go to. How many premature lives are ended because they don't get it. So we need help, and we need help defeating this Senate bill and this House bill so that we can govern our borders in a way that keeps our citizenry safe.
Thanks.
Councilman?
That's fine. You're fine. I think you did it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you guess that?
Thanks.
Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up. I want to thank City Council, all the members, the President. I want to thank the Mayor and Judge Lerner, our 3 state senators. For those of you who do think it's really wonky, visit our ceasefirepa.org/greedygunlobby. We have an infographic, we have a video, we have some letters to the editor you can download, and some letters you can send to your representatives and senators. They need to keep hearing from you. We need to keep fighting. We're very glad we have Philadelphia on our side, but this does affect Pittsburgh and Lancaster and Harrisburg and Allentown and very small municipalities as well. So Philadelphia is fighting for all the cities of Pennsylvania. Thank you.